But yeah, so I am also the head of A&R at Boominati. If you guys don't know what Boominati is the label that was established by the world-renowned producer, renowned producer of hip hop and more, Metro Boomin, and you him since the year 2016, and have created and worked on some of your favorite, whether that be radio, film, TV, and yes, since that time, being that album Naughty, I've worked with artists such as Wizkid, Post Malone, Quavo, Offset, Uncle Waffles, Don Toliver, Burna Boy, JID, and the list kind of goes on. Yeah, so I'm super excited to kind of just dive into this about the idea of what A&Ring is. I think super important for us to figure out the basis of what that is, because before we get to anything else, the music is what comes first. So let's dive in. So an overview, when we think about music, right, we think about the creation process of how to even start the idea of how we get to the A&R, which is there are different components. But the overview is first, you have to have tools and equipment. That is always important. The next thing you want to do is you're going to want to find your sound. That is very pertinent in terms of creating who you are as an individual and your music. Once you do, you want to create a song. From there, you then say, okay, I've created an ample amount of music, and now I would like to find the record that I'm going to go with in the time that I'm trying to release. So that's choosing your single. From then, you want to say, okay, here's my single. How do I tell the story behind it? Once I have that story, I am now ready to put it into distribution mode. And then from there, you want to get the product, which is your music. And so, yes, let's start with number one. So tools and equipment. The recording equipment that you're gonna need essentially is things that are gonna actually help you make a record. So that means getting your music to be recorded digitally. So some of the things like actually in the studio that are for the first things is you're gonna need a microphone. It sounds funny, but there are people who might not know that. So I want to make sure that everybody here understands one of the first things we want to do is we want to make sure that we have a microphone. One of the next things that you're going to need to have software. So some of the software that people use to record are things like Pro Tools, Ableton. Ableton is something that you find on Mac computers most of the time, but these things are all downloadable no matter what you're using. People use Logic Pro, and so to have one of those softwares is going to allow you to actually record yourself. And then also too, if you guys don't have actual equipment, there are things like apps that allow you to do so. So people who are in Nigeria and from other countries or overseas, and you might not have the ability to buy the actual equipment, there are apps like Off Top, so OFFTOP, that have the ability to actually record into the software. They have things like auto tune so that you can record and put layers. You can actually layer your music. So something like Off Top, there's another app I believe that Jordan Lucas is a part of, who's an artist, called Tully, the Tully app. So if that is something that you guys have been looking for and haven't really quite found something to help supplement your ability to record without the equipment, there are actually apps in the sphere that would allow you to do so. And then, just for people who are at an advanced level and wondering, hey, Vlad, what are some of the things outside that you kind of use? Speakers, you can use any speakers you like. I personally have Samsung speakers in our studio. Another thing that I have is the Apollo, which is basically the interface that allows you to do everything. So that means to hear the music come from the speakers, record. One of the other things that I have as well is a Tube Tech. So Tube Tech is actually a compressor, and when you're basically recording your vocals and you have the mic, it goes inside the Tube Tech, and it basically just allows for the most crisp vocals that you can have as you record. And the Tube Tech is actually, it's pretty expensive. They actually are delayed on making them, but I'm sure that there are other options. Also, you can just use one of your recording materials or apps and then they would also have a plugin, which would be a tube tech. And then essentially you can just use that through the software and not have the actual physical. And yeah, and Bay 1073 is something else that I also have in terms of your mic and being able to have the best sound that comes out of there as well. So boom, we are now at finding your sound. I think this is probably one of the most important aspects of a young artist's career, because a lot of the times we say to ourselves, how do I essentially stand out from the rest, right? And one of the things that's going to be is it's going to be about finding your sound. So initially you'll say to yourself, what are ways to do that? Well, one, the way that you would start is, how do you know what you like, essentially, right? Sometimes you as an artist, you want to have your own essentially originality, but in order to sometimes get to where you want to get to, you have to kind of look at the things that have come before. And so that will come from listening to various different styles and genres. So you explore a wide range of musical genres, you listen to different artists and pay attention to how they use their voices. So right now we can look to thinking about artists that are more like melodic, right? And so we think to artists like Rod Wave, or we look at artists like a Trippie Redd, and what a Juice World was, rest in peace, right? And so that would be more on the melodic side. And so that is what you would consider that sound, is like a melodic sound. And then we might even say, okay, you know what, I actually want to go into, let's say, for my people who have tapped in from the world, like Afro beats, right? And so now you would listen to like an artist like Rema, and like Rema, what he's been able to do is he uses this sort of Indian like accent tone when he's like, and he's kind of like mimicking these kind of Indian sound, right? And so he's kind of found his tone, right, and how he does it. And then so maybe one of the most famous tones that we kind of know from a sound perspective would be like Pop Smoke, right? He had that very deep baritone bass like voice, welcome to the party, right? And that became very popularized, not only in himself, but other trap New York rappers, right? That came out. And so yes, that would also go with identify your influences, reflect on the singers who inspire you most. So, for some people who were in the trap, it was Pop Smoke. For some artists, it was in the African diaspora, it might be Rema, or it might be Burna Boy, who, when people think about Burna, they think about like songs that create emotion or evoke emotion, so spiritually. So that's why we get, the yeah, right? Like we have those records. And then one of the newer artists in the space, more like an Asake, he was kind of one of the one that created that vocal surround sound, right? So having multitudes of sounds on one record where it kind of has that choir like sound. So that is a sake sound, and he's kind of found it. But in order to get there, you're gonna have to experiment, right? So you're gonna go to the studio, you're gonna sit down, you're gonna say, yo, you know what works for me? So you might, start off with the higher note if you're a singer. And then you say, you know what, I'm not really a soprano. Let me take it down. I'm more, comfortable at an alto sound. And you start to kind of get in there in your range and find the pocket that suits yourself, right? So obviously I'm speaking more towards someone who's singing R&B. You're saying, okay, my voice is not quite there yet at a soprano level. Let's go here. If you're a male, sometimes you may be hit the alto, but you might be more of a tenor, right? So you want to make sure that the records you're making have this level of vibrato, and you can create essentially the music that fits your being, right? You don't sometimes want to go outside of that, because and you can, because you might make a sound that unlocks a whole new version of your sound, but you tend to kind of know what you can do and not do, with your voice. And then yeah, record yourself, maybe record voice notes, videos, and kind of just see where you are with your sound. Make a voice note. As A&R, I know sometimes artists want to always send me music at its like peak. They're like, nah, I can't give it to you unless it's mixed or mastered, essentially. But that's cool. Just like make the music. Nothing is perfect, right? In order to get to the 1,000th step, you have to take the first one. So just do it, and again, embrace your uniqueness. Whatever your sound is, I'm sure it's beautiful. You found it on your own, or someone has helped you to kind of find it. And whatever it is, just embrace it, because who knows, where that sound might take you in the future. Boom. The next step, once you have found your sound, is creating a record. Um, this is honestly my favorite part of music. I think a couple years ago when I was in school, a good friend of mine was like, "Yo, like, I'm starting to create music. I'd love for you to kind of come and help me, like, work on the music and market the product, whatever." And I remember the first time that I ever started writing music on my own. I was like, "Yo, I love this." I like fell in love with the idea of like creating lyrics and putting together records and the hooks, etc. And it excited me. I really was like, yo, this is fire. Like I actually remember that day like it was yesterday. And so I understand all of you guys who are actually on this Zoom is like there's an excitement that you get, right? When you get to a place of creating a record, whether you're the actual artist or you're a manager and you're sitting in the studio and you're like, yo, this is gonna be fire. The beat that you chose was crazy, whatever that might be. But creating a song is like one of the best experiences that you can do in all of music, I feel like. So the first thing is inspiration and conceptualization. Finding inspiration and develop a theme or concept for your song based on personal experience emotions. Look, there was a quote that I had that we created for the marketing for this, which is that there's no such thing as bad music. The reason why I say that is because you're an artist, right? So like if my son came to me and he painted this picture and he's 2.5 and he says, "Daddy, look, here's this picture," I'm not gonna say to my son like, "Yo, that's not a great picture." I'm gonna say this is dope because it's his art, right? And he's expressing himself. And so in that, I want you guys to know as artists, there's no such thing as a bad song because ultimately that song is created for you. That's why when we say making a song is based off your personal experiences, emotions, right? So you need to find it in yourself and say, okay, you know what? Here's some of the things that I've been through, right? Like I come from the inner city of Boston, and have experienced a lot as a Black male in this country, whether you are from Nigeria, you know what I'm saying, and you come from a certain area, right? We talk about WizKid, he's from Sierra Leone, and WizKid comes from nothing to something. That's why when he made the song, um, you know, um, from Mo Dog Studio, I'll be hustled. That song was a spiritual because it came from somewhere. It actually came and evoked emotions that allowed us to hear it on the record. And so, yes, find it. Find where you want to create your song from. Think about these experiences that you've been through and create, subject matter. Let's write lyrics and melodies, right? So let's engage in what we're actually creating. So now we have this subject matter, and let's say it's what you did yesterday, which is like you picked up a new whip. You know what I'm saying? So now we're talking about the new car, and so now as we're talking about this new car, we want to find lyrics and melodies that attract people to talking about a new car, right? And so you want to say to yourself, what are things that are adjacent to cars that make sense? Maybe that is how you start to build out the lyrical value. So you might say, people tend to, when they're talking about, cars, they might go, yo, just bought, some new rims, or whatever. Or back in the day when it was, in the South, it was Mike Jones, they talking about the spinners or Paul Wall, right? And so obviously we can relate to that because we understand what that is. And now more than ever, the worlds are connected, right? Because of TikTok, because of social media. So what you're actually creating from a lyrical standpoint, it can be engaged a lot better than it used to. Sometimes music used to be regional, but we're now at a time where global consumption is big. So your lyrics and melodies have the ability to reach more than just you and where you're from, what's important about once you get the lyrics and melody, song structure. How are we making it? Sometimes you start off a song, it might come off right, on the hook. Sometimes you start off a record and it starts off with the verse. You just kind of just don't know when. It's kind of like you let the production kind of lead you. I think that's important. Sometimes you guys want to say, okay, look, if this production has a lot of patterns and high kicks, and you might want to condense how you're saying it and let you kind of come into the record. But if it's a little bit more airy and it has a lot more space to breathe on it, then okay, put some more words because you have the ability to fill in the gaps where there's no sound on them. Yeah, once you've kind of find those three, which is like the inspiration, what we're talking about, the lyrics that you think that you need to put towards it, and how you're going to structure the song. Boom, let's put it on wax. That's the, back in the day on the vinyl, let's put it on wax. So let's actually start to record. Let's get, the Pro Tools rocking. Let's get, Logic. Let's start to actually put these things in motion and record the sound, and then once you kind of get there, you feel good about the melody, you feel good about the lyrics that you have, the subject matter of what you're talking about, you've recorded it. Now, we got to the place of like, okay, we've got the final version. Let's make sure that the record doesn't have any samples or any interpolations. Right now, look, if you're an artist and you want to sample something, I'm not telling you don't, but what I am saying is if you don't have it actually cleared and don't have the ability to put it out on DSPs, then you've got kind of an issue. But again, quick, make sure that the producer you're working with doesn't have that, so that if you're like, yo, I just want to get this record out as fast as possible and I have no hiccups, that's something that you always want to make sure that you check on. Boom. How are we choosing our singles? This is very funny because one of the things that, at least for us at Boominati with Metro, we really don't pick singles. Metro's not really a big fan of choosing singles. He is more like, let's let the people kind of dive into a project and then they choose, right? And that's kind of been true to the last, projects that we've put out, whether that be Heroes and Villains, Savage Mode 1, 2. A lot of the times we just put the projects out and kind of let it speak for itself, essentially. But that's not everybody. And sometimes you're saying to yourself, you know what? I want to choose a single. So here are some of the steps. One, test your music with trusted individuals like other producers and credible artists. Now, when I say that, artists, I love y'all, and let's be truthful about things. I want you guys to be able to essentially choose a record that makes sense for you, but you also want to make sure that the people that you're looking to kind of essentially show the record to, they have a level of credibility. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, you might have a friend that is a producer and they finally got their first placement. It is an indicator that they actually have the ability to make records that people want to listen to, right? That is one of those things. Or let's say you have a friend who put a record out and they chose their single, and now they have a single in a month that has 100,000, 150,000 streams. There's a level of credibility there. You know what I'm saying? Now, we don't want to go to Auntie, who been loving you for her whole life, and you play her a record and she hears it and she be like, oh, that record is so good. Stop. Come on. Let's be truthful about it. Maybe that record to her is good, and every record that you gave her is gonna be good, but you want to find people in your space, you know what I'm saying, people in your cohort that make sense, that are making music that you can look to and say, hey, here's this record, I like it a lot. I think this might be the one I'm going with. What are your thoughts? A/B test your record. So when we say that, essentially what you can do is, again, have one record, have another record. So you might play it for some of the people who are more established. Yes, you can still play it for people who don't, and see how they evoke their emotions, and then kind of take those two testing or samples of letting them listen and say, okay, you know what, the people who are a little bit more credible liked it, and the people who I know like music but they're not necessarily as credible, they both, okay, boom, this record might make sense. And then this is a very, very important thing about singles. So now when I said what I said about that marketing thing, and when I said every artist who makes music, you never make bad music because it's your creation, it's your art, right? You're expressing yourself. However, there is a place where when you make music, you're not making music that allows for growth in terms of building choosing a single that reaches out to a broad audience, right? And so, for instance, let's say you're saying, I want to make a song that attracts someone from America, but I also like to, introduce someone from, or let's actually the opposite. Let's say you want a song to introduce to everyone, America, Africa, and in like Spanish speaking countries. But you're like, you know what? Today I want to just speak in Spanish. Boom. And you make a record. By definition, can I put this song out and it still attract people from Africa, still attract people from America? Yeah, right. But that's going to be harder. So that record is going to now be more so focused or be attained when I market it towards people of Spanish speaking cultures. But if I want to make a record that allows everybody to be a part of, I have to choose one of those records. So it's important that you create or choose a record that appeals to a broad audience, if that's what you're trying to do. Sometimes you're making music for a niche crowd or your own specific audience, but in this case, when you're choosing a single, especially as a new artist, and you want it to allow the fish, essentially, you're throwing a fish net, which is your record, and trying to grab as many listeners and people as possible, you want to choose a record that has the ability to bring in a broad audience. And then once you've kind of went through those three processes, you finalize, the single for release and say, you know what, I feel good. I've showed it to people that I trust, other people who are credible in the space. I've taken this record and this record that I have, and I showed both to both people on both sides. They like it. I feel like I picked the record that allows me to reach a myriad of people. Boom, we are ready to release our single. Boom, storytelling, which is very important to me and a lot of the people that I've worked with in history. So yes, I am the A&R of Boominati, but I also am a co-founder of Integral Studio, who Meg, who is the founder and CEO of Symphony, is my partner. Integral basically helped create a lot of the story and narratives of a lot of your favorite artists, whether that be a Travis Scott, Trippie Redd, 21 Savage, SZA, right? We have been behind the narrative that has driven these artists. And so these names are artists that now have, gone on to win Grammys, be nominated, etc. Storytelling is very, very essential to what you're trying to build as an artist, because you can have great music, but if you're not able to tell the story, then you're not going to really be able to um, essentially connect with your audience, right? And so storytelling is, let's create the narrative. Let's find a way to say, all right, I'm Vlad, I'm from Boston. Let's just say most people in the world think about Boston and they think about sports, or they think about the Celtics. What? I have a record. It's about rings. I like, let's say I had to drink. I need a really big ring. It's a championship type theme. So now I might make a mood board that involves championship rings or championship banners, or right, because I'm staying along the theme of the record that I'm creating, right? And so your mood board wants to reflect the things about the record that make sense. If you making a song about dollar bills is green, and you start putting yellow, or you start putting, I don't know, anti-bank establishment stuff, it doesn't make sense. We need to stay on tune with what the mood board. And I know that sounds simple, but you'll be surprised, right, at about how many times artists come to me and they're like, yo, I'm trying to figure it out. And they come to me with a mood board. I'm like, that doesn't really make sense to what you're trying to create. But, for the most part, you guys seem to be well established in what you guys are doing. All the people that are on here, you guys are smart enough to understand, okay, I need this mood board. It needs to make sense with the single that I'm putting out. And so now, as we make this mood board, keep in mind what we need, right, in terms of asset creation. So one, we need cover art. That means we need a cover art for the single specifically. If you're also working on an album, obviously you would work towards having a cover album, an art for the album. But in this case, we're focused on the single, right? You guys can imagine and think about some of the creative, cover arts that you guys have seen with SZA. Was the computers and CTRL, and that was a big hit. We've seen famous ones, rest in peace to like DMX laying down in the blood, right? But again, all these things, I'm sure were on this mood board and they made sense to the music. You're gonna need cover art. You're also gonna need content assets for DSP imaging, right? That is for your distribution platforms. That means Spotify, Apple, Deezer, Tidal, Audio Mac, whatever you name it. You're gonna need these images. What do you do for those? Go get someone who can do a photo shoot. Go get a professional photographer. If you guys don't know any, I always say this: closed mouths do not get fed. Throw it on IG, put it on your story. Say, hey, looking for da 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 da. I promise you, either you will find it or someone else will find or help you find the people that you need to actually make it. And then this is very, very important, guys. Short form content. Nowadays, storytelling is not even necessarily built off of music videos. It's really more so based off content in short form, right? And we can point to things like TikTok. We can point to things like um Instagram Reels. You have to remember the attention span of our fans are, they're getting smaller, right? Or in that way. And so you have to be able to grab someone's attention. Short form content is very important because you have to create content that's going to grab your audience quickly. And you're going to have to create content that allows it to feel organic. Those are very two important pieces. So when we get to the part where we talk about marketing and product, but when you are starting to put these content forms in front of people, whether that be paid marketing or just, from your socials, you want people to feel like they are a part of what you're telling them or what you're trying to get them to, or you're trying to convey to them. And so short form content is going to be important. You don't have money for a music video? All good. Let's make a 2 minute short form, put it out. Let's make a lyric video, create that, put it on YouTube. But and then also now YouTube Shorts, right? Which is basically on YouTube versions of Reels and TikTok. These things are going to be important. So if there's anything here, obviously cover art, DSP imaging, photo shoots, they're all important. But your short form content is going to be very, very important with your storytelling. And examples of this, people like La Russell, a lot of the artists that are coming out of Africa. One of the artists that I work with as well, Uncle Waffles, who's gone viral and is everywhere, is short form content that you can see, it looks lively or it has a certain energy or it evokes a certain emotion. As long as you have that and you do it and you create it cohesively and bring all that content together, promise you your music that you've created, that single that you've chosen, is also now going to have a powerful form of visual that's going to allow people to connect with you. Distro. How you going to get your music out? Distribution. You got to choose the platform that makes sense. Now, Meg probably answer that later, but like we don't have the direct upload to like Spotify yet. But now, if that's not the case right now, we still have things like TuneCore, CD Baby, DistroKid, AWOL. Now, if you are someone who is based in Africa and let's say, or just any third world country to a degree, and financially you don't have the ability to necessarily pay for something like this, there's things like United Masters. United Masters is actually coming to Nigeria, I believe by the end of the year, if not top of the year, but you can upload your music there for free and get it on these platforms so that your music can be on the Automac, be on, Spotify, Apple, Deezer, Apple Music, Tidal, etc. So you just want to find one of these. Obviously, all the names that you see up there are viable. Take a screenshot, do whatever you got to do. TuneCore, CD Baby, DistroKid, AWOL. Companies like AWOL and Sony's The Orchard. Usually there's kind of this process that they connect with you, you connect with them, and then they incubate and choose you. But there's other ones that you don't necessarily have to do that, and they're up there. Prepare your music and metadata. Ensure that your music files are in the required format. Quality, provide accurate metadata, including track, artist name, album art, release date. That's what the metadata is, basically about the record and everything that is the record. Those are all the things that you're gonna have to need. And so managers, you have artists. I'm sure you know what metadata is. For artists who don't know, you can kind of just take a deeper dive, look it up. But it's not the hardest thing in the world. But you want to make sure that all those things are correct. Boom. Set a release date. It's time to choose the date in which the music is going to be, put out there. Now, as you say, okay, we're going to put this music out, but let's start to figure out how we roll this out. So, like you said, social media teasers. This is from the short form content, promotional events, and collaborations that lead up to the release of your record, right? So, some of the things that you've seen is like Coyle Ray's done a great job at this. She has been able to tease records on TikTok, right? So she takes a snippet, puts it out, and you're like, whoa, I love that record. I want to. And so you're engaging your fan base, right, at an earlier state on your socials without giving them the record. But maybe when you do that, what you're doing is you might have your pre-save link, which we'll talk about, but pre-save link, put it in your bio. You say, yo, here's the reel. Oh my God, that was amazing. So now they can go from your reel to your pre-save link, click on that, and then now you've collected those audience sets. And don't forget, because this is still Symphony University, Symphony allows you for when your fan signs up for your pre-save link, there's this thing called Forever Save. And essentially, Forever Save says when someone now signs up as a pre-saver, initially, they will forever be there. So that means when you go and put out a new song, you'll be able to get that person again at a pre-save level. And so essentially the music is now living in their library. So very important. Um, and then yeah, submit to streaming services, distribute your single to major online music stores. So that means once you submit, it'll go to the Apples, the Amazons, Google, etc. Boom, we're here. Music is out. Next step, market your record. And again, we've got a little bit of the nuances that I talked about before, but now we are at this place, right? And so now, shameless plug, it's time to get, people say like, I'm about to get in a car, I'm about to Uber. When you're about to market your record, we say it's time to Symphony. You feel me? And essentially, it's time to get on the platform and use the tools that Symphony has, right? We need to figure out how to define our target audience. One of the ways that we do it is we say, okay, let's make a link, right? So let's say we create a website, and so we have this website, we put it on, we create it through Symphony, and so now you're having people say, let me go into the link, right? So you drop a song and say, hey, if you like this, come and pre-save. So what happens is when we pre-save, we now know who our audience is. So we get to find out if someone pre-saved it, where they're from, basically how old they are, what type of customer of listener they are. So that means you can see if they actually are a Spotify premium user or a Spotify ad user, right? So it's not free. They actually have the ads pop up as they listen. Why is that important? Because let's say you want to drop merchandise in the future. If you want to drop merchandise in the future, you're going to say, I want to, and we have another thing called the fans tool. Essentially, you'll be able to go in and email all these people all at once, right? And so you say, I want to push my merch to people who are more likely in my fan base to buy. Now, if we know that someone is a premium user, we're not saying that they're the richest person in the world, but we know that they pay to subscribe, which means I want to make sure that I post, this merch link to the people in that premium usership because they have the ability or are more likely to purchase. We're almost through, so I'll answer you guys in a bit. Don't worry. Let's run ads. Boom. You don't know how to use Facebook Ads Manager. You don't know how to use TikTok Ads Manager. It's fine. Again, Symphony. We Symphony, which means we go on, say, okay, here's the record. I'm going to upload my single. When you upload your single, every platform that it's on, it will come up. Symphony will automatically detect it. Boom. Now we're here. Now, okay, now I have a song that's more Afrobeat leaning. So what do you want to do? You want to A/B test that music with ads, and you want to do it where? So you can actually go on Symphony and say, I want to do it in African countries. And then you might say, well, actually, I want to do it specifically in Nigeria, Tanzania, and the Congo or something of that nature. And you'll click those. And then you can actually say, okay, let me put how long I want to do it for. I want to do it for 2 weeks. And what's your ad budget? You can start low, smaller, sorry. If you have $100 to your name and that's what you can do as your budget, that's fine. Put the $100, add it on there. Finding a fan a day through this is better than no fan at all. So $100, perfectly fine. If you have the budget, run 2,000-3,000 or $1,000 a month, do it. Everything that you do on the ad side is going to help you regardless. Be strategic. Social media use. A lot of people know, a lot of artists technically do know how to use social media, and there are a lot of artists who don't. That's fine. If you're not one of those artists, find someone maybe who is a little bit more creative. So like you might know a TikToker that you grew up with or whatever, tap in with them. It's okay. You don't know how to use the platform, that's fine. But what I would always say is once you're using social media, I want you guys to start to create these social media plans. So that means planning out when you drop content, how often and where, right? So if your engagement says on Symphony that most of your people are on Instagram, let's start creating Instagram. Which content is the most engaging on Instagram? Reels happens to be that. So let's actually use our thought process of which things make the most sense in using that. So Twitter, if your affinity is there and people retweet your things a lot, then that's where you should be living. If you're, younger generation and TikTok is where it's at, let's do that. Again, collaborate with influencers and communities. When we say that, let's say you have an Afrobeat song, it people are, dancing to it. You're like, wow, I think I should tap in with who? The dance community. So that means reach out to the influencers in the dance community, put the record in front of them, and use that as a driver for the music. Um, Create visual content. Remember, eye-catching visuals, creating lyric videos, simple music videos. Share. You might even do the thing where if you're an R&B singer, you have the half and half. You put the song out, and then someone starts to sing on the other side, and you do a collab. These things work. As much as you think that they don't, get on there, try, and you never know what might happen. And then again, be present. If you're an artist, people need to see you. Go to your local events, collaborate with artists in the music scene. When I was in Boston, we were very small. One of the things we used to have this thing called 12 for 12. It was like 12 artists, that were in the space doing their thing. And that's how the scene began to grow, is because we're actually all around each other. And then when you're there, you'll find the photographers, the people who create production, producers, all these things will start to align. And all these pieces are all going to work towards, marketing your products. And that is the end of my Symphony University conversation. I appreciate you guys.
Amazing. You just dropped some serious gems. I was taking notes the whole time. Like, that was serious. I feel like a lot of people have had lots of questions in the chat. I would love to open up to some questions. Anyone that has questions, anyone wondering anything, wanting to learn from this legend V Live, ask your questions. We're here to answer them.
Should I start with the ones that were here before?
Yeah, let's do it. Girl.
Ashwin Guerra asked at 11:06, said, "What is your best advice for marketing the rollout of a project with a low budget?" Yeah, I mean, I feel like I answered it a bit. One of the things I will say is, listen, content is king, or if you're a queen, content is queen. And when I say that is because some artists really had no content, right? And I can say this from a lot of artists who might not be from America, might be from countries where that is a little bit harder to do. But if you create growth hacks with content, and when I say growth hacks, it's essentially content where like it will bring attention no matter what. Like you think about it before you put it out, and you're like, you know what? This thing will bring attention. So, like for instance, there's an artist by the name of Baby Storm. She has this thing where she does like these flash mobs, right? At the end of the day, if there's a group of people and they're all together and they're doing something that people don't tend to see, that is going to grow out your usership. So if you don't have money, you need to create opportunities through content to essentially put your music behind the content and let people see it. That's one of the ways that that's going to, basically be able to roll out music without having the highest budget in the world. And then again, $100, doesn't matter, $50 if you have it, put it on Symphony, pick countries with lower affinities in terms of creating eyeballs. So that means like when you run ads in America, it's a little bit more expensive than running ads in like Mexico, or running ads in an African country rather. So yeah, that's another opportunity or a way that you can do so.
Someone else also asked, Violetta, how do we protect our song through copyright measures?
I mean, essentially you're gonna once you make a record, it's the metadata is like when you create and upload a record is considered like when you made the song, right? And so if you actually put a record out before someone else, then it's essentially copyrighted in that way. However, if someone else created a record and you're like, yo, they copied my record, but their record is out before yours, there's an argument to be had. But as long as you create the record first and that there's no, again, interpolations or music that's out, that's a part of the production, then you're safe by saying, I've made this record and I put it out before anyone else. You're pretty much protected in that way.
Yeah, we also have Micaiah. What are some ways to double check that productions do not include uncleared samples?
It's crazy. There is this, I can't remember this website, but there is a website. I'm sure there's an AI tool now, but that you can basically go and like upload your song and find it. I'd have to look at it again, but ultimately, this is why that A/B testing is very good and with people who are credible sources, because people like me have heard a lot of music from the 60s to now to whenever, and I might be able to hear the record and say, yo, that actually sounds like there's a sample in there, or a couple chords in there that might be from another record, and so your best bet is to be able to go to different people who are in the space and say, hey, listen to my song. They might have that ability to do so, but finding a tool where you can kind of put it in, some sort of AI tool. I got to remember what it is when I get the chance. I'll update you guys, but uploading in there and then seeing if the record, has anything in there already.
And it's a great question, right? With all the music created today, I feel like that is something that we can run into. Paul's also asking, this is a great question, if we can still use Symphony to run ads if we upload through United Masters.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually there's a partnership now between Symphony and United Masters. As long as your song is out, it doesn't particularly matter where you've uploaded. You could use TuneCore, you could use CD Baby, because again, when you go on to Symphony, you'll sign up, and then when you say I want to promote my music, you'll actually go and it'll give you the ability to choose a single. And when you choose a single, it doesn't matter where it's uploaded from, as long as it's available in the Spotify's, the Audio Max, or Apple Music, etc.
Right. And V, I feel like throughout the session, you were bringing up a really good point when it comes to A/B testing and testing out your single in different ways. Brad's asking if what a good approach to A/B test. He's asking if ads should be run at night or paused, or time of days that he should be running his ads.
Yeah, that's a good question. To be honest, the great thing about what Symphony does is it optimizes to find your fan no matter what time and where. So essentially, when you're running these ads, you'll find the people who the music needs to get to. Now, clearly, by definition, people are sleeping. If it's the nighttime, people are sleeping. In the daytime, people are up, right? And so, if you're like, I want to run the ads most efficiently, you probably want to run it during a time when people are actually awake. But here's the funny thing: I might be sleeping in America, but somebody else might be awake. And if you're that's what you want to do, then you might say, let me spend this money in this country during these times, and you do that. But to be honest, A/B testing doesn't really require a set of time. What it requires is the truth, which is like whenever someone gets to the music, whether they liked it or not. And so one of the things we used to do is we used to take a content piece, right? Run it. And so basically you're running a content piece that will take you from Instagram to YouTube, right? And so as you're running these ads, people are going to say on your ads on YouTube, I came here from Instagram. And then when you go from there, you want to look at your comments and see what people are saying. Now, that is far in because you might have already chosen a single. Let's say you've already chosen a single and that's what it is. Then you can see in real time if someone really likes the single that you've chosen already and if they rock with it. But before you even get there, you just create a little content piece. Maybe take a content piece that's cool that people know, but it's your song behind it, but you don't necessarily have your own unique content piece to it, and see what people are saying just on the Instagram. If it ain't responding too well, let's stop, take that content piece out, switch it out for another record, and let's try it again.
Also, with that being said, I feel that it's really cool how on Symphony we kind of break down the touring markets and like global markets, and it allows you to see, where it's hitting in different places. So with the V's point at night, it being something, and during the day, like the global markets are, the times are going to be different. So it all comes together. Dro's asking us, how do we set up promo through Symphony?
Well, you gotta sign up. You gotta get on there. The most beautiful thing about what Symphony is, it's a SaaS tool, right? So that means you can go on there yourself, sign up, and create, a campaign. I believe we still have some level of free tier. Meg, am I correct on
We
that?
do, yes, we do.
Okay,
Yep.
money against. So you guys can hop on, use that, and just start to like spend some money and see what it looks like. But remember what I said, in order to get to the 1,000 step, you got to take the first. So just get on the platform and start, playing around with it. And I promise you'll figure some stuff out. If not, come back to us. We'll help answer any questions that you guys have.
Yeah. Brianna's asking what type of job she should be going for that helps her align to become a better artist.
Hmm. That's a very good question. Um, to become a better artist, well, I mean, by definition, I guess one of the things you could say is like being around like music in general, right? So like basically maybe like finding an indie like label, right, that you can work with. I think maybe going to major, you won't find that same experience because it's less on hand. It's a little bit a lot of noise happening, but like maybe an indie where you can go and maybe be like on the marketing side, you know what I mean, and figure out, what it looks like when things are being marketed. Another thing that you could do is, it sounds but like working at a school of music potentially, you know what I mean? Maybe like if you're in the Boston area, you're at Berkeley or whatever, and you're around a bunch of artists and being present in that space. But to be honest, like, as an artist, I feel like you draw inspiration from a lot of different places, and it takes you just being in your space and creating, But I will say this answer to that, what I think would be number one is maybe a studio and maybe being an assistant, seeing artists coming in and out who are established and work right. A lot of artists that I know, they basically were their own engineers or self engineers previous to this. So I think a studio might make a lot of sense actually.
I agree. I think that that would be cool to just be around the exposure and the vibes there. Bo, with the burning question, he wants to know, what's your favorite Metro song?
My favorite Metro song. Well, I think it's funny being biased. I guess I'm biased against everything, but my favorite Metro song would be the song that I helped A&R, the two of them right now. One would be Congratulations with Quavo and Post. I'll never forget that studio night. We were there and it was Posty session. And I remember Metro kind of be like, yo, like Quavo is hitting me up. He wants to tap in. But it wasn't, Metro session, it was Post. And he was kind of like, what does it make, like, what's like, I'm like, you know what, just invite him. Cause at the time, and this is when we're talking about sound, I was thinking, you know what, Post has this really dope melodic sound that he has, and so does Quavo. Now they're not necessarily the same, but I think that there could be some level of marriage there. And ultimately, Congratulations came out of it, and it became a
Yep.
diamond record, my first diamond record. And then also now we just A&R'd and helped A&R my first movie soundtrack, which was the Spider-Man soundtrack into the universe, right? Spider-Verse. And yeah, I told me and Metro were listening to our newly signed artist, Royce on Boominati, and she had this amazing hook. And I heard the beat and it was just had this like real like East Coast vibe, New York. And I was like, yo, we gotta put Rocky on there. And he's like, yo, you're right, Rocky. We put Rocky on there, and now I believe it's going to be Oscar, up for Oscar nomination. So yeah, those are probably my two favorite records.
Amazing. Violetta also wants to know, does a song being out on-chain or as an NFT count as being out, or does it only count if it's out on DSPs?
Well, if you want to market via Symphony, it's gonna have to be on DSPs, unfortunately. Now, you guys got to make an argument to Meg and let them know, hey, we need a new feature. We got to be able to put these NFT records, in here. So he's gonna have to start talking to all those, those distributors in that way. But yeah, you have to have it on a DSP in order to market it.
Facts.
A great
And
question.
Clayton, yeah, that was a good question. Clayton is also kind of jumping into the digital space, asking us if we recommend artists think, or asking you if you recommend artists think about using AI like ChatGPT in their marketing and promotion efforts.
No problem. I'm not mad at it. Like, listen, there's a lot of things I'm great at. I'm not if you tell me to draw a tree, I'm gonna draw a tree like my son. Promise you that. So if you aren't an artist, yo, ChatGPT, I need a blue background with this, run it. You know what I'm saying? These things are tools at our disposal for us to use to help better our process. But yeah, don't feel ashamed. Trust me.
And with that being said, Maestro, that's Symphony's AI. It's running all of our campaigns. It's there helping to give you recommendations and answer your questions. So we're on that too. We also have a question coming in from Adamu asking, what are the best qualities that an A&R possesses?
Um, the best qualities that A&R possesses is, I think, one, their ability always to listen, and that is from all aspects. So that means being able to listen to your artists, being able to listen to the sounds that are around you. You never know what might influence you. You know, I take different trips. One time I was in South Africa early this year, and I promise you, I probably have it on my phone, and there was this guy playing this instrument, and he was just doing, I never heard that sound ever in my life. And I was like, man, what is that? And I told my boy, like, yo, hold on, I'm coming. I'll be right back. And I didn't go to the car. I ended up going over there, and he just started doing it. I was like, keep doing it. And he had this vocal sound that he was doing with his voice. And I like recorded it. And then I was like, thank you so much. I even took his email. And the reason I did that is because I would love to make sure that he gets the credit, you know, if we ever use that sound or his voice on the production. But the best A&R listens, and they listen in a myriad of ways. But they also understand what they're creating, right? And so you're not just aimlessly making music, you're making music with intention. And I think that is also another great quality of A&R.
I agree. Jumping on that last question coming from Robert, what's the best way to get in an A&R position with Boominati or another label?
With Boominati, man, only the few are chosen, so it's gonna be hard to go up over here. Now, but just in the label in general, you know, a lot of the times, you know, just like you guys know me, I'm sure you guys know a bunch of other A&Rs, right? And tapping in and reaching out to them. But you go into a system, sometimes, you know, you go into a label like career jobs, and they might have like a smaller A&R assistant or just like another role that allows you to just get in the building. Um, I think that there are a lot of companies now, a lot of indie labels. I think a lot of artists or A&Rs should start there, really more on the indie side, because you want to be feel like you're hands on. Sometimes when you go into the majors, it's a little bit less hands on. Another place where you can be A&R too, and I think it's a great place, is like not only A&R on the label side, but like publishing, you know. And actually, I think A&R on publishing side is a lot more fun because you have artists from all labels, right? They're not necessarily on one label, so it's agnostic to that. And then you can kind of say, okay, let me take these producers, put them with this artist over here, etc. So maybe finding one of the publishing arms that makes sense to you, whether that's like a Warner Chappell, there's Pulse, there's, you know, a bunch of those tapping in. And then there's this thing, and this is the last tidbit. It's a plugin, and I was actually talking to Maggie. There's this thing called Roster that has a lot of like music industry jobs available. So if you go to that Instagram page, they have a lot of openings. So check that out. But yeah, and then to be honest, being your own A&R yourself, creating playlists, sharing them with people. If people start to listen to your music and they're listening to your playlist, that means you have the ability to do so, right? And then maybe sharing your list with a me or someone, you know, and I say, yo, this is actually super dope, you know. Actually showing your ability to show that you have the ear for quality music is always important. And that doesn't have to start anywhere but where you're sitting.
Amazing. Everything. VLive, we appreciate you so much. This was an amazing session. I'm sure everyone listening, watching has taken lots of gems from this. Everyone who joined, thank you so much. This was episode 3. Stay tuned for episode 4. This will be streamed on YouTube. So if you want to follow back up, take extra notes, you can catch us on there and on the Symphony app as well. I hope everyone has an amazing day. Thank you so much again, V, and we'll catch you guys later.
I
Thank you,
appreciate y'all.
Pete. Thank you,
Big
everyone.
love.